I remember watching Steve Jobs' keynote for the original iPhone. I was a Palm Pilot user at the time, and Steve promised that the iPhone would be a PDA, a phone, and an internet communication device all in one. This magical new device would revolutionize our productivity. And at first, that's exactly what it did. My first iPhone made me more productive. But then the apps came along. And apps make more money the more time you spend in the app. Soon, user experiences were being scientifically optimized to be as addictive as possible. Facebook always has a number and a red bubble when you log in. Always. Even if there's nothing really important going on. Now, it's not uncommon for authors to spend hours on their phones every day. The typical American spends 4.5 hours on their phone every single day. That's half a work day staring into a tiny 6-inch screen. And before you scoff at this, check your screen time stats on your phone. You may be stunned to see how much time you are spending in that 6-inch world. What are we doing with those hours? It's easier to read an email than it is to write one. It's easier to watch a video than it is to make one. Mindless doom scrolling is easy. Thoughtful content creation is hard. Writing is hard enough when you're on a laptop. It's just about impossible when your world has shrunk down to a 6-inch screen. Now that we've had smartphones for 16 years, an author's productive output is inversely correlated with the time on their phone. Or, put another way, the writers who spend less time on their phones write more books than the doom-scrolling authors who complain about writer's block. So how do you spend less time on your phone and more time writing? Well, find out in this episode of Novel Marketing, the longest-running book marketing podcast in the world. I'm Thomas Umstattd Jr., CEO of Author Media, and this is the show for writers who want to build their platform, sell more books, and make a living writing books worth talking about. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast by clicking follow in the podcast app on your phone or clicking subscribe on YouTube. So I'm going to give you some tips on how you can reduce your time on your phone. And the first tip is to track the time you spend on your phone. This is now very easy with both Android and iPhone. I personally get a report once a week telling me how much time I spent on my phone. What gets measured gets managed, and you won't be able to make any progress in reducing your phone time until you know how much time you're spending on your phone. Now, the second tip is to combine your phone time goals with your writing goals. So a lot of authors have writing goals, and these are typically a daily word count or a daily writing time count, right? You're trying to spend at least an hour a day working on your book. Well, I recommend combining that goal with your phone time goal. So you'll find that it's a lot easier to hit your writing goal if you're simultaneously trying to spend less time on your phone. And if you have a writing accountability buddy, I recommend sharing your phone time numbers with each other as well as your word counts. This one thing could make all the difference. The third tip is to silence notifications. Part of what makes the phone so addictive is that it pesters you throughout the day to pick it up. And I hate this. The notifications you most want to mute are emails. You never want email dinging to let you know you've got a new email. You don't want this on your phone. You don't want this on your computer. Social media notifications. And when I talk about silencing notifications, I'm talking about sounds. I'm talking about alerts where something pops up on the screen. And badges, that little red number. That little red number is a hack where your brain is getting hacked by these big tech companies. You don't want your phone constantly feeling like an obligation with constant harassments and reminders of all the things you need to do and all the fun you could have if you just tap that colorful little icon. You should decide when you use an app. The app should not be able to interrupt you. It should not be able to interrupt your life. Ever. Email should never ding. Not on your computer, not on your phone. To write, you need concentration, and you can't concentrate when things are constantly dinging or popping up, or you're seeing little red badges with little red numbers that pull you in to something that's not the most valuable thing you could be doing right now. The fourth tip is to buy real things. Having a real alarm clock keeps you from needing a phone next to your bed. And there are smart alarm clocks now where you can just tell them, wake me up at 6:45 a.m. and it will set an alarm and wake you up at that time. You don't need a phone for this. Having a real calculator at your desk keeps you from pulling out your phone. This used to work great for me until my kids would sneak in and play with my calculator. They love pushing those buttons, so it never seems to be here. But if you don't have small children, I recommend buying a real calculator. You can get one for $12 on Amazon. The fifth tip is to get a phone box. Putting your phone in a box for a time forces you to get away from it. This can be as simple as a plastic shoebox in another room in the house, or it can be as sophisticated as a timed box, where you set a timer and you don't get your phone back until that timer is expired. This can be great for helping you set aside time to write. The sixth tip is to switch your phone to grayscale. And this is the tip that inspired this episode. I recently did this and it has been life-changing. If you go to settings and then accessibility on your phone, you can switch your phone to grayscale mode. This makes it where there's no colors on your phone at all. And what I love about this is that it's a visual signal that the phone world is not the real world. You're like, well, obviously what's on the phone is not real. It's just a digital world. But when you're spending 4 hours every day on the phone, that phone world can start to feel very real. And this can lead to all kinds of delusions and other problems. Problems I have personally experienced. Vibrant, saturated color is actually kind of rare in nature, and it draws the eye, it pulls you in. It's why flowers are so beautiful, why they invite you to look at them. There are not a lot of things in nature with the red of a rose, but on your phone, that red is as common as you want it to be. Those vibrant, saturated colors are everywhere. And what this does is it causes the phone world to feel more real, more vibrant than the real world, which creates a cycle of addiction and it pulls you in. And if you look at the charts of how much time Americans are spending on their phones, it's going up every year. And I think this is part of the reason. And switching your phone to grayscale makes it feel more like paper, makes it feel more artificial, and it creates a longing for real world color. Since I've switched my phone to grayscale, I found myself outside more. I found myself working out more. I found myself moving more. It's made me a better person. And it doesn't make any sense because it seems like such a minor change, right? The substance is still there. And rationally, I should be spending just as much time on my phone as I did before. And yet somehow now I'm spending less time. I see it in my tracking. And it also helps some trends make sense. So a big trend in fashion and interior design, and even for toys, is something called sad beige, right? Beige decor, beige clothes, beige toys. And when you're bombarded by vibrant color on your phone all day long, it makes sense to want your home to be a colorless backdrop for your real life in the digital world. But once I've switched my phone to grayscale, suddenly I crave more color in my life. And this doesn't make sense, but it's true. I really encourage you to give this a shot. Switch your phone to grayscale. And on the iPhone, you'll also want to turn on high contrast mode. It makes the phone a little bit easier to use in grayscale mode. But the combination of grayscale and high contrast will help you realize this world, this 6-inch world, is not real. It will create a desire in you for the real. And that can really make a difference. Tip 7 is to set app limits. This is kind of the obligatory tip for a list like this. This is where you limit the amount of time you spend on a specific app or in a category of apps. You know, like I'm going to limit myself to no more than 30 minutes of social media a day or something like that. And I found this to be completely ineffective, at least for me, because on the iPhone, you just type in a pin to then get 15 more minutes. And it did not change my behavior at all. Nothing like switching to grayscale, but it might work for you. And there are ways of making those app limits a little bit stronger, working in an accountability partner. So maybe you can make this work. But app limits, it's an option. It didn't work for me. What does work is removing addictive apps. So the core apps that came with your phone are productivity apps. It's things like your calendar. It's things like email. Those are not particularly addictive, and they encourage you to do work, to do productive things. But in the 15 years since you've owned your phone, you have installed a lot of apps, and many of those are super addictive. So the most addictive categories of apps are any kind of doom scrolling app, where the primary interface with the app is scrolling up to the next piece of content. So TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, these are all doom scrolling apps, and they're very, very addictive. They're not good for your mental health. They're not good for your productivity. Another kind of addictive app is any kind of game, especially games with real-world timers with notifications saying, oh, it's been 4 hours, you can now get more gold coins if you open up the game again. That kind of game is poison for your productivity. And it's not a real game because there's no talent required for the game. If you spend money, you'll win. If you spend time, you'll win. It's not a real game. Uninstall that noise. I'd also say any app you haven't used in a month, these apps are all spying on you. They're all filling up your phone and taking up space. And if you just purge, when in doubt, uninstall, you will be thankful. Your future self will thank your present self for uninstalling apps. And remember, reinstalling an app is easy. So if you accidentally, in uninstalling 100 apps, realize that 3 of those apps you really still need, you can reinstall them without too much trouble. And now that you have space on your phone, this brings us to tip number 9, which is to install deep apps. Deep apps are apps that are non-addictive and add value or substance to your life and allow you to have the kind of deep content experience that the phone was originally intended to have. There's things like podcast apps, audiobook apps, ebook apps, right? This is not that addictive doom scrolling activity. Reading an ebook is very much like reading a regular book. And in grayscale mode, it actually feels a lot like reading an actual paper book. It pairs very nicely. And this leads us to our final tip, which is find things to say yes to. Saying no to a bad behavior is not enough. If you don't replace that bad behavior with a good behavior, your phone addiction will only get worse over time. So here are some things to say yes to. The first is to switch screens, right? The phone is primarily a consumption device. Switching your screen time from your phone to your laptop can be transformational. The laptop is a creation device. Its design invites you to lean forward and make something. The phone's design invites you to lean back and consume the creation of others. But it's not just switching screens for work, it's also switching screens for play. Watching something with my wife on our TV is more enjoyable than watching something alone on my phone. Playing a PC game with my brothers online is more fun than playing an iPhone game alone. And so just stop with that little screen. It's not the best for fun. It's not the best for work. Another thing that you can say yes to is dictation. Your phone is just a tool, and you can use that tool for good. Your phone really can make you more productive if you use it to make yourself more productive. The typical talking speed is between 110 and 150 words per minute. That's between 6,600 and 9,000 words per hour. And if you spent 1 hour every day dictating your book rather than doom scrolling, at the end of just 1 week, you'd have 50,000 words drafted. That's a NaNoWriMo's worth of writing every week. And all it cost you was 1 hour of doom scrolling. Just sacrifice 1 hour of doom scrolling for 1 hour of dictation, and you could draft a 50,000 word book every week. The authors who have mastered dictation are able to, in many cases, write a book a month because that first draft goes by really fast because they're able to use their voices and just tell a fun story. And if you get out in nature and dictate a book while you're walking in nature, you will be a happier person. Especially if the time that you were spending during that hour was doom scrolling on TikTok or doom scrolling on Instagram. Reading the news, reading about other people's perfect lives, supposedly perfect lives. Get off that. Do the deep work and you'll be happier. You'll be more productive. You'll write more books and you'll feel better about yourself. Another thing you can say yes to on your phone is deep learning. One way phones boost your productivity is through great learning, specifically audiobooks, courses, and podcasts. If you spent an hour a day using your phone for deep learning, you could master so many subjects. And this is how I tried to use my phone most of the time. Most of my recent knowledge comes from engaging long educational content on my phone. Now, this is episode 420 of the Novel Marketing Podcast. And at this point, we have episodes on just about every aspect of publishing and marketing your book. People who binge this podcast often go on to have very productive writing careers, very successful writing careers, and or are able to leverage their knowledge into getting a job in the industry. And all of the episodes are free. You could listen to all 419 other episodes at no additional cost. All it costs is spending a little bit less time doom scrolling and more time engaging in deep learning. And the other great thing about this is since the podcasts are audio, you could be cleaning the garage or doing the dishes while you are learning. It's a really great combo. I love podcasting. That's why I have a podcast, but I also listen to a lot of podcasts. In fact, I've been this last week cleaning my garage and listening to podcasts while I've been doing it. And I feel so much better about myself doing that rather than spending that time doom scrolling, which is what I was doing back when my phone was in color. So I will say this is something that I struggle with as well. I haven't kicked my phone addiction. I still spend more time on my phone than I would like. So let me kick the question to you. What do you do to limit your phone use? How do you maintain a healthy relationship with your phone? Leave a comment below this episode. I read every single comment. I read the comments on the blog, I read the comments on authormedia.social, and I read the comments that are posted to YouTube. And don't forget, June is Patron Appreciation Month. Everyone who becomes a patron in the month of June gets a special gift. Speaking of patrons, our new patrons, and as of the month of May, are Kate Kossel, Kalman, Zachary Bernard, Jessica Baker, Alicia Wilson, Marlene, Jana Bass, Apple Ann, Lindsay Locke, Connie Peterson, and Nora Carmen. Thank you so much for being patrons of the podcast. Thank you for allowing me to do this. This is how I support my family, and it's your support, right? You could be listening to these episodes for free, but you're choosing to give some value back, and I really, really appreciate it. The Novel Marketing Podcast is a production of authormedia.com. The audio engineering is by William Umstadt. The blogification is by Shauna Lettler. And you can find the blog version of this episode at authormedia.com/420. That's episode 420. I'm Thomas Umstadt Jr. saying thank you for listening and live long and prosper.